From Unity of Houston, Texas, this is the Awakened Life with Reverend Howard Caesar. Unity is a non-denominational spiritual community providing a positive, practical, and progressive approach to Christianity. Let's join the service in progress now with Reverend Howard Caesar.
In this life that we live, we all have perceptions and we all have perspectives on things. And so people have comments, and there are quotes out there, and I just want to share a few perceptions and perspectives. One is by Arnold Schwarzenegger. He says, "Having more money doesn't make you happier. I have $50 million, but I'm just as happy as when I had 48. Robin Hall says, lawyers believe a person is innocent until proven broke. Now that's just a perception. There are a lot of wonderful lawyers, and I have friends that are. Anyway, John Glenn, you remember John Glenn? He was up in space, and John Glenn said, "As I hurled through space, one thought kept crossing my mind. Every part of this rocket was supplied by the lowest bidder." So how do we arrive at what it is that we are going to believe? What is it that gives you your view on life? What is it that helps you arrive at conclusions, makes decisions? What's the basis of your perceptions about life, about God, about your purpose here on earth, and various other things? And do our perceptions contain a perspective of truth, seeing with the eyes of God? Or are our perceptions kind of stuck only with a focus on what is in front of us, what it is that our eyes go to currently? I want to share a story with you. It's about two little babies, infants. They're inside a mother's womb. She's having twins. These two babies are having a conversation. And one baby asked the other, "Do you believe in life after delivery?" And the other replied, "Why, of course. There has to be something after delivery. Maybe we're here to prepare ourselves for what will be later." The other one said, "Nonsense. There is no life after delivery. What kind of life would that be?" And the second said, "Well, I don't know, but there'll be more light than there is here. And maybe we'll walk with these legs and eat with our mouths. Maybe we have other senses that we can't understand right now." And the first one replied, "That is absurd. Walking is impossible. Eating with our mouths, are you kidding? That's ridiculous. The umbilical cord supplies nutrition and everything we need. And the umbilical cord is so short, we maneuver." Life after delivery is illogical. Get over it. Second one insisted, "Well, I think there is something, and maybe it's different than it is here. Maybe we won't need this physical cord anymore." First said, "Nonsense. And moreover, if there is life, then why has no one ever come back from there?" Delivery is the end of life, and in the after delivery, there's nothing but darkness, silence, oblivion. Takes us nowhere. Other one said, "Well, I don't know, but certainly we will meet Mother. She will take care of us." The other one said, "Mother? You actually believe in Mother? That's laughable. If Mother exists, then where is she now?" The second one said, "Well, She's all around us. We're surrounded by her. We are of her. It is in her that we live. And without her, this world would not and could not exist. And the other one said, well, I don't see her, so it's only logical that she doesn't exist. And the other one said, well, sometimes when you're in silence and you focus and you really listen, you can perceive her presence and you can hear her loving voice calling down from above. End of conversation. So I ask you, do you believe in life after delivery? You obviously have to. You're here. Do you believe in life after death? Whether you say yes or no, I do, of course, and we're all going to find out one way or another. But it is true that, life is eternal. But life after death is not the topic this morning, okay? The topic this morning is really perspective and perception. And noticing that one of the babies was all about perceiving, seeing how things were as they were in that moment in time. The other one went beyond what currently was and had a perspective that moved them beyond what was. Very different. And so, at every stage of life, we have perceptions and we have a perspective. On virtually everything that comes our way in life and comes to us, we have perceptions and we take on a perspective. Webster's dictionary says that perception, is the awareness of objects, things in our material world, life, through the five senses. It's what we gain and receive from the five senses. But perspective is a sixth sense. It is the art of seeing beyond. It is that which is of greater depth. It is that which gives you the bigger picture. It is that which is often the real truth. And so is our perspective, based on the circumstances and situations that we face in life? Is our perspective based on what we're perceiving with the five senses? Or are we able to shift into a perspective that takes us beyond that into what might be possible, what might be a reality beyond this, and what is wanting to be experienced at another level? We say, ego tends to focus on conditions as they are and usually paint them in the worst case scenario because the ego voice is the voice of our smaller self, which tends to keep us in worry, doubt, and fear. And so that's one part. That smaller self has to be overcome by what we'd call the Spirit of the Lord, the Spirit of God that is in us, that is also talking, just as the one was able to listen quietly and know there's another voice here, there's another message, there's another dimension that is calling my attention. And so there is a statement biblically that is a very powerful statement, and it's very popular, and songs have been written around it, and chants and what have you. And it's the statement, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. I love that. And that really leads one into a perspective, if you're able to know that. More about that to come. When we look at the Bible, one of my favorite verses and passages is in Genesis, where God is speaking to Abraham, and God says to Abraham, Abraham, lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are. Look northward and southward and eastward and westward, and all that you see I will give to you. Now there's a mystical statement in that. He's not talking about look at the land and look at the physical objects. He's saying look to a perspective beyond. Whatever you bring into your imagination, into your visualization, into your inner reality, I can help you have. And that's what he's telling all of us. It's to look beyond, to new possibilities. It's a message that's clearly about perspective that is beyond perception. And so perceptions can vary, can they not? from person to person. We're all different. We all have different histories. We all look through a different lens. We have different filters. We've had different experiences. We've had different influences that cause us to perceive in different ways or develop habits of having a perspective or not, that is healthy or not, that is good or not, that is harmonious or not, that takes us forward or keeps us stuck. Perspective has great power. And so any single event, what you perceive and what I perceive can be very different because we're different people, different places. The same event can be interpreted and perceived in numerous ways. Let me give you an example. There is a story about, it actually dates back to World War II, and there were two servicemen that were boarding a train. It was a general and his aide, a young lieutenant. And they're boarding, and traveling from one base to another. In this particular time, they were traveling on a passenger train with civilians. So the two servicemen, the general and the young lieutenant, go to the compartment, and in their compartment they find two people already seated. One is a beautiful young lady, and the other is her grandmother. So they sit down, and the train starts moving, and they start talking and conversing and get to know each other, and they're getting along really wonderful. And at some point in the trip, they enter a dark tunnel, a long dark tunnel. And it's so dark you can't see anything. That's the way trains were years ago, you know, they don't have lights and all that. So it was pitch dark. And once they were inside the tunnel, all four passengers in that compartment heard two distinct sounds. There was the smack of a kiss, and there was a sound of a slap. It's interesting how each perceived what happened. The young lady thought how glad she was that the young lieutenant had gotten up the courage to kiss her. But she was somewhat disappointed that her grandmother had slapped him for doing it. The young general thought to himself how proud he was of his young lieutenant, that, you know, he being enterprising enough to take this moment, an opportunity to kiss a attractive young lady. But he was flabbergasted that the grandmother had smacked him thinking he had done it. The grandmother, she was also flabbergasted to think that the young lieutenant would have the gall to kiss her granddaughter. But she was glad that the granddaughter did slap him for doing it. The young lieutenant was trying to hold back from laughing because he had found the perfect opportunity to kiss an attractive young lady and to slap his superior officer, both at the same time. We're all in different places as to how we perceive what is happening before us, around us. Our perceptions feed into our perspective on life, on our experience of life. And so we have to ask ourselves, am I perceiving only what I see in front of myself, or am I able to kind of go beyond it with a perspective that takes me beyond it into new possibilities, or am I stuck? There was a guy named Robert Schuller that talked about possibility thinking, and basically it was about always having a perspective that takes you into new possibilities beyond what is currently before you. And so there will always be those who basically honestly don't believe something that we do believe. And there's a story in the New York Times that Jack Holland, who was a wonderful speaker, the late Jack Holland, and he was here to speak when we were in the pyramid as our sanctuary, and he told about an article that was on the front page of the New York Times back in 1921. And basically he was telling about how the article was urging the Senate not to approve the nomination of Herbert Hoover for Secretary of Commerce. Later he became president, but he was up for Secretary of Commerce. And they were saying that they shouldn't put him in that position because they portrayed him as being either senile or had somehow flipped out. And that was because he was talking about something that was coming into being at that time called radio. And as Secretary of Commerce, Hoover wanted to create stations, and he called them broadcast stations. How crazy is that? And he said it was a new way of communication and education and entertaining people as the world had never known. And so he said he would license frequencies, that there were different frequencies that different people could tune into, and that basically you could have all these, unlimited number of people tuning into one frequency. And so the paper said anyone with good sense would know there is only so much ether wave. And if 100 people were trying to tune into one frequency or station, nobody would hear anything because all the ether would be gone, used up. So again, one perspective of somebody saying, we can't have radio. Are you kidding? Radio is impossible. They don't understand frequencies, connections. There's a frequency that we can all tune into. Doesn't matter, the whole planet. It's the frequency of God, frequency of love, frequency of oneness. It's always there. It takes us into peace and harmony. We are all in the process of evolving in new understandings of what is possible and opening to new possibilities for ourselves. And so we've said that perspective takes us beyond the five senses. And so if one wants to create or move into a new day, a new life, a new job, a new project, wants to change their life in some way, they have to get beyond what they may perceive from maybe an unhealthy, unhappy, negative point of view. And they have to create actually a perspective of what is possible for themselves. And they have to begin to live for that, to be able to make that and bring that into a reality. That is a principle. And it's more than a New Year's resolution. That's kind of surfacey. There's a story about a school in which the principal wanted all the teachers to fill out some New Year's resolutions and put them on the bulletin board in the teachers' lounge. And so they all did that, turned them into him, and he put them on the bulletin board, and they all gathered around, the 8 or 10 of them, and they were reading, and all of a sudden there was a big commotion, and this one person was upset, creating a scene. Why aren't my resolutions posted? Why aren't mine? All upset. And so the principal quick went back to his office and shuffled through and found that he had misplaced this person's resolutions. And when he looked at it, the top line, the first resolution was not to let little things upset them. So we need to be talking about, really, there is an inner assessment of how we are thinking about any next new phase in our life, any next new step. There are inner choices, there's higher thought, there's plugging into and connecting with the divine, allowing it to give us a perspective. Jesus did that, We are told that he went 40 days into the wilderness prior to his ministry of fasting and prayer. And while he was there, he had the temptations, he met up with the devil, okay? Many scholars or metaphysicians have called that simply the ego. It was the voice of the smaller self that he had to rise beyond and really know who he was. And from that, the strength and the power would come in to him. And it was basically knowing that. And following that experience of the 40 days, or however long it was, but it's documented that it was 40 days, he immediately went to Nazareth, and he went to a synagogue, and we are told scripturally that he stood up and read. It's the only place in the Bible that I know of that it tells that he actually read. Now, we quoted scripture at various times, but this is where it says he stood up and read to those people there. And what he read from was the book of Isaiah, and it was chapter 61. And if you go to 61, you know what the first line of that is? The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. It was his first word to everybody. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. And because it's upon me, he went down this list of lines. And he said, it has anointed me to preach good news and to bind up the brokenhearted and to proclaim freedom for the captives and to release from darkness the prisoners. And all of this. And there's, again, because the Bible is really our story, it's always telling us something. We have to integrate it internally. It's a teaching here for us that when we say and feel, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, if we can go to that place and have a deep knowing about it, you get to the place where you know that you have been anointed and appointed to bring good news to the world and your families and your jobs and whatever it might be. There's a knowing that you can proclaim freedom to whatever is holding you captive, that you can release from darkness whatever has imprisoned or been imprisoned in you. Now he stopped reading it. He read some of this. It's in the passage in Luke. And then it's not included, but we don't know if the writer of the gospel chose not to include the rest of 61 because there are some other things that it says the Spirit of the Lord being upon me can do. It can bring comfort, it goes on to say, and it can bring beauty, and it can bring the oil of joy, and it can bring the garment of praise, and you become like a mighty oak in right-mindedness. Very powerful. And so we know that Abraham was told by God to lift up his eyes to a perspective beyond perception. And we also know that Jesus was told to, actually he told us, lift up your eyes and look unto the fields, which are already ripe for the harvest. Get beyond how long you have to wait, how things may look now. There are harvests waiting to come into your life and reality. Don't look at all the weeds that are growing in the fields. Don't look at the fact that it's maybe dry. Don't look at the conditions and the problems and think that, gosh, we got to fight our way through 4 months or 4 years or 40 years before my good will come to me. It's saying, no. Right now, you can have a perspective that right now the universe, God, is trying to flood your life with a harvest of good. He's giving us a perspective. Pablo Picasso, he once said, everything you can imagine is real. Stop and think about that. Everything you could ever imagine actually is real, exists somewhere in the universe, or wants to come into being and into expression, into realization, into your experience. Anything you can think of and imagine. Albert Einstein stated, I am enough of an artist to draw freely upon my imagination. Imagination is more important than knowledge because knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. Knowledge is really all we can take in based on what we perceive, what we read, what we bring in that way. But there's another dimension that we have to call upon if we are going to have a perspective that takes us beyond challenges and difficulties and circumstances, all of this. It's deepening your divine connection. It requires a self-honesty. It requires doing your own visualization and imagery, your own prayer, your own meditations, your own affirming, just as Jesus did when faced with the temptations. As you read through them, he affirmed a truth. He hit that part that wants to rise up and maybe have a separate self that might be small when there's a part of you that knows you're connected to God and this is what you're to be about and to bring good news and good things into this world. He was affirming his connection to Spirit. And so the Course in Miracles says all your difficulties stem from the fact that you do not recognize yourself or your brother or God. To recognize means to know again, implying that you knew before. Everything you brought into this world, at some level you know. And that's why it's so important to get to a place of knowingness in the quiet, in the sanctity, at the altar, at the core of your being. There's a knowing, and that knowing, like the little baby that always knew something, wants to take you into a perspective that shines light on your world and your life. That's what we're called to do as well. And so let us know ourselves again, what we have known before. Let the Spirit of the Lord be upon us. Affirm with me, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. Together? The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. Again, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. Allow yourself to really feel and take it deep one more time. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. It is. It has always been. And it is that Spirit of the Lord that will help you know again who you are, what you are, the role you're to play in this world. Go forward and have that grand and glorious perspective that you are one with God, you are love, and goodness wants to flow forth into you and your life. God bless you all.
Thank you for joining us for today's message. We invite you to be with us again next Sunday. Unity is inclusive, welcoming people of all walks of life in dignity and love. We believe that love, strength, and goodness dwells within you. May we all live in unity with God, humanity, and all of God's creation. And remember, as Reverend Caesar says, life is meant to be good.
When you visit Unity of Houston, you'll find a spiritual community, a church where you can connect and learn and grow with a progressive approach to Christianity. At Unity, we welcome you no matter what your beliefs. You'll find a teaching, loving, inspiring experience as we help each other be all we're created to be. Check us out. We'd love to have you. Find us online at unityhouston.org, and remember, life is meant to be good.
Hi, thank you for tuning in this morning with us and our broadcast. And also thank you for tuning in through the weeks and months and perhaps years that you may have been watching our TV broadcast and any support you may have been giving our ministry. We have some changes that are underway and want to be sure you are informed so that you can continue to be a part of our viewing audience. We are going to be able to provide live our entire worship service. That includes the lesson, the meditation, great music, and all elements of the service beginning September 10th. At that time, I will also be passing on ministerial leadership to my successor, Reverend Michael Gott, who is wonderful, and you are going to love him. August 27th will be our last time on TV, on television. But you will have the opportunity to stay with us on computer, on Facebook, on tablet, simply by going to our website, unityhouston.org. At 11 a.m. each Sunday, we'll be there live on your home page, and you can worship with us in its entirety. We are going worldwide, global, and we are very excited about that. Also, if you are not able to join us on computer, we're able to provide a DVD, and you simply need to call the church and to set that up and make arrangements. That's at 713-782-4050. We have been on television these past 13 years, and it's been our honor to serve you in this way. I thank all of you, those who are longtime listeners and those of you who may be new. But we sincerely hope that you will join us as we move forward to expand our reach and take these wonderful teachings to the world. God bless.